It is 4 a.m. in the Shambles, York, 1200. The blood is already running in the gutter, not because anything has gone wrong. Because you started an hour ago, and this is simply what the gutter looks like at 4 a.m. in the Shambles. The air is cold enough that your breath fogs in front of you, and the steam rising off the open carcass of a pig hanging behind your stall makes it look like the animal is still exhaling. It is not. You made sure of that. You have been awake since 2 in the morning. In that time you have killed 3 pigs, hung a side of beef, and generated enough tallow to keep 14 households in candlelight for a week. The city needs everything you are about to do today. It will also complain about the smell for the next 6 hours. You are standing in the most essential and most resented trade in medieval England. And the strange part, the part that takes the whole day to land, is that almost everything you are doing right now in this freezing dark ankle deep in what used to be inside an animal is something the modern world decided to forget. Not because it stopped working. Because no one remembered to ask whether it still should. You are a butcher. A freeman. A guild member in good standing, which means you have paid your fees, sworn your oaths, attended your meetings, and agreed to a set of rules so detailed they govern not only what you sell, but how well you are allowed to sell it. The guild can fine you for selling bad meat. It can also fine you for selling good meat at the wrong price. It can fine you for working on a Sunday, working too late on a Saturday, or working so efficiently that your neighbor files a complaint. Freedom, in a medieval guild town, is a concept with a very detailed invoice attached. But the invoice comes with protection. No one outside the guild can sell meat within the walls of York. No one inside the guild can undercut you so badly that your family starves. The system is not a free market. It is a cartel with a patron saint. And right now, standing in the Shambles at 4 a.m. with blood on your apron and a knife in your hand, the cartel is the only reason you can afford the apron. You are confined to this street, not as punishment, but as infrastructure. The blood from your work drains into a specific gutter that leads to a specific ditch that does not connect to the town's water supply. Someone planned this. It works. The modern equivalent is a food safety regulation that took until the 1800s to rediscover. The tallow from your shop tonight will be sold to the chandler 2 streets over, who will make candles that will light the homes of people who have no idea their candlelight is made of the same animal they ate for dinner. This is not a secret. Everyone knows, no one thinks about it. That is, medieval resource economics working exactly as designed. You are not just feeding the town, you are keeping the lights on. And the day has not properly started yet. The animals arrive alive. This is not a choice anyone makes for sentimental reasons. It is the only refrigeration system available. The animal keeps the meat fresh by continuing to be an animal until the last possible moment. Cattle are driven through the streets of York by drovers who have walked them from farms outside the walls, and the journey is a documented weekly catastrophe. Animals escape. Animals panic. Animals occasionally end up in the river. The city tolerates this because the alternative, no beef, is worse. Running of the bulls in Pamplona is not a tradition. It is a medieval supply chain problem that became a festival. You are standing outside your stall watching a drover try to convince a bull to walk through a gap the bull has correctly identified as too narrow. This will take a while. Once the animal is yours, the work begins, and it does not pause. A good butcher in 1200 can break down a full ox carcass with 3 knives and no instruction manual in under an hour. You learned this from your father, who learned it from his. The knowledge is not in a book. It is in your hands. You know where every joint separates. You know the angle that opens a ribcage cleanly. You know which organs to remove first because they spoil fastest, and you know this not because someone told you, but because one morning, when you were 12, you did it in the wrong order, and the result taught you something about the smell of a ruptured gallbladder that you have never had to learn twice. A modern trained butcher works from a carcass that has already been industrially processed twice before it reaches them. You are working from an animal that was alive 20 minutes ago. These are not the same trade. One of them requires you to understand the animal from the inside, in the dark, with a knife. The other requires you to understand a conveyor belt. And you waste nothing. The fat becomes candles and soap. The stomach lining becomes a cooking vessel. The intestines become sausage casing. The bones become broth, then glue, then handles. The blood goes into the black pudding before it has time to reconsider. The pig bladder, once cleaned and dried, makes an airtight container that is flexible, durable, and biodegradable, used to store lard, liquids, and in some regions inflated and used as a football. You do not see waste. You see a container that has not been processed yet. The pig is the most valuable animal in your inventory because every single part of it converts into something the town needs. Bristles become brushes. Lard becomes cooking fat, candle material, and leather preservative simultaneously. The expression, everything but the squeal, is medieval in spirit, if not in origin. You do not see an animal. You see a supply chain with legs. Now look at what happens to each piece after it leaves the carcass, because this is where the modern comparison stops being unflattering and starts being embarrassing. The blood from this morning's slaughter is already in a pot. By this afternoon, it will be black pudding. By tomorrow, it will be sold. Your relationship with blood is not squeamishness and not indifference. It is the practical understanding that blood is protein. Protein has value, and value that runs into a gutter is money that runs into a gutter. Wasted blood is a guild violation in some towns, not on ethical grounds, but because blood is a raw material with commercial value, and wasting raw materials is bad business. Bone broth, currently sold in trendy health food shops for several pounds a carton, is your byproduct. The bones go into a pot. The pot goes on a fire. What comes out feeds the poor, flavors the pottage, and is considered so nutritionally fundamental that medieval hospitals use it as a recovery diet. You are running a functional pharmaceutical byproduct operation without knowing it. Rendered tallow, beef or mutton fat melted, clarified and set, serves simultaneously as candle fuel, cooking fat, leather preservative, waterproofing agent, and skin protection against cold. One substance, 5 industries. You are not a food producer. You are a raw materials hub. Remove you, and the chandler has no wax, the tanner has no grease, the soap maker has no fat, and the town goes dark after sunset. This is not a metaphor. This is a documented dependency that the town planners understood and managed by clustering your trade in the Shambles close to the chandler's quarter. The supply chain is a street. A modern industrial abattoir processes thousands of animals per day and generates waste streams that require dedicated processing facilities, environmental permits, and ongoing regulatory management. You process dozens of animals per week and generate no net waste because every byproduct has an immediate buyer 2 streets away. Scale changed everything. Not always in the direction we assumed. The food that leaves your stall feeds the city, and the way it feeds the city tells you something about nutrition that the modern food industry quietly unlearned. Offal, liver, kidney, heart, tripe, is the cheapest meat on your shelf because wealthy customers do not want it. Liver contains more iron, more vitamin A, more B12, and more folate per gram than any muscle cut you sell. The poor who eat offal because they cannot afford anything better are eating the most nutritionally dense part of the animal. The wealthy who avoid it are not. This irony is not visible in 1200. It will take 8 centuries and a nutrition science laboratory to confirm what the price structure of your shop already made inevitable. The cheap food was the good food. Nobody planned this. Nobody needed to. Nose-to-tail eating is not a philosophy in your England. It is Tuesday. The idea that eating the whole animal is a progressive culinary movement would confuse you in exactly the same way that artisanal slow food confuses anyone who has actually been hungry, who are also required by guild law to donate unsold meat to the poor rather than carry it over to the next day. This is simultaneously a public health rule, a charitable obligation, and a price control mechanism. One law doing 3 jobs. The medieval guild system is not efficient, but it is occasionally elegant. Your meat prices are controlled by the guild and enforced by the town. If you overcharge during a shortage, you can be fined, pilloried, or have your stall confiscated. Price gouging during scarcity is a criminal offense. The medieval town considers affordable meat a public utility, not a market commodity. This regulatory framework will collapse in the early modern period. It has not been fully reinstated. Salted meat from your shop lasts through winter, not because it is preserved perfectly, but because salt-cured meat, properly stored, develops a microbial environment that outcompetes the bacteria that cause spoilage. You do not know this. You know that salted meat lasts and unsalted meat does not. The mechanism will come later. The practice came first, as it almost always does. The Martin Moss slaughter, the mass killing of animals in November before the winter feed runs out, fills your shop with more carcasses in 1 week than you see in the entire month of July. The salt comes from the coast. The work is relentless. The meat that survives this process will keep a family alive until Easter. The meat that does not will teach someone a lesson about brine concentration that they will not need to learn again. Now the trade starts to cost you something that is not measured in pennies. Anthrax is an occupational hazard of your profession. It has no specific name in the butchery trade because it is simply part of the job. Your response to an animal that dies strangely before slaughter is to not slaughter it, not sell it, and not touch it more than necessary. This is, broadly, correct. You do not know about Bacillus anthracis. You know about consequences. A knife injury in your trade in 1200 is not a minor workplace incident. It is a potential death sentence, not from the cut, from the infection that follows the cut, arriving 3 days later with a confidence that suggests it had been planning the visit. You wear a leather apron not for hygiene, but for cut protection. The leather is not clean. The protection is real. You can identify a diseased animal before slaughter by observing its gait, its eyes, the condition of its coat, and the smell of its breath. This is not folk wisdom. A 2019 veterinary study confirmed that experienced traditional butchers demonstrate statistically significant accuracy in pre-slaughter disease detection using exactly these sensory indicators. You do not know the science. You know the animal. Medieval butchers in many towns are prohibited from slaughtering animals they suspect are sick, not by veterinary regulation, but by guild rule, because a town that develops a reputation for selling diseased meat loses its market. The financial incentive and the public health outcome are, in this case, perfectly aligned. This alignment was not designed. It emerged, which is either reassuring or alarming, depending on your feelings about regulatory frameworks. And here's the part that sits quietly at the end of the health ledger, waiting to be noticed. Modern abattoir workers in industrial processing facilities have documented higher rates of repetitive strain injury, respiratory disease from airborne contaminants, and certain zoonotic infections than pre-industrial butchers like you. The difference is scale and speed. You process dozens of animals per week with full sensory engagement. An industrial line worker processes hundreds per shift with partial sensory isolation. Your individual exposure is lower. The cumulative industrial exposure is higher. Modern system did not eliminate the danger. It redistributed it across more bodies moving faster, and called that progress. Everything so far was the manageable part. The real danger in your trade is not a knife, a diseased animal, or a guild fine. It is summer. Without refrigeration, meat in July behaves with a speed and enthusiasm that meat in January does not. Your summer working day is shorter, faster, and more expensive than your winter one. Not because you work less, but because the product has opinions about timing that cannot be negotiated. And then there is the guild. One bad season, one dispute with a fellow member, one false accusation of selling turned meat, and the stall is gone. Not the stall as in the wooden structure. The stall as in the license, the livelihood, the right to work. A guild member in bad standing is a man with a set of knives, and nowhere legal to use them. Being found guilty of selling putrid meat in a medieval town does not result in a fine. It results in the spoiled meat being tied around your neck, and you being paraded through the town while it decomposes. This is not symbolic. The smell is considered appropriate commentary on the crime. The medieval justice system occasionally has a sense of proportion. When English towns begin requiring slaughter to happen outside the town walls, a process that takes most of the 13th and 14th centuries to enforce, the butchers of York, London, and Bristol fight it as a guild, as a trade, and as individuals. Not because they want to keep the blood in the streets, because moving the slaughter outside the walls breaks the supply chain that connects the slaughter to the chandlers, the tanners, the soap makers, and the glue makers, who depend on immediate access to the byproducts. The waste economy and the food economy are the same economy. Separating them costs everyone. The town does it anyway. The circular economy becomes a linear one. The byproducts that once walked 2 streets to a buyer now require transport, storage, and a new set of middlemen. Efficiency, in this case, is not the direction anyone expected the loss to come from. You spent today standing in blood, navigating guild politics, and turning one animal into sausage casings, cooking fat, soap, candlelight, and dinner. You knew things about that animal that no supermarket worker alive today was ever trained to know. The city needed you. It also complained about the smell. Some things have not changed. The Shambles in York is a gift shop now. The buildings still overhang the narrow street at the angle designed to keep meat in the shade during summer. The shade function is no longer required. Nobody knows why the overhang is there anymore. That is the whole story.